Welcome to part 2 of your video notes. These video notes are going to help you be successful on the upcoming tasks that will be graded and put into your gradebook. These are also the types of problems where we are going to apply problem-solving skills and reading strategies. So if you have experience with reading strategies, if you have experience with problem solving, which I know all of you have, then you are going to need to bring in these strengths to go through these notes and for the next lesson when we do other problems like this. So part 2 of your notes involves quadratics and context. So quadratics, I'm really into this blue pen today. Quadratics in context. And it involves a story. Mischief, Mischief, is a toy poodle that competes with her trainer in the agility course. If you've never seen dog agility, they have these obstacle courses for dogs, and the owners like run with the dogs and they go up teeter-totters, down and up ladders, and they jump over things. So if you've never seen this before, it's pretty funny. But this is Mischief. Hi, Mischief. And Mischief is a toy poodle. Anyway, Mischief, when she jumps, or he jumps, can be modeled by the equation, this equation. So you do not have to write everything down, but you can write something like Mischief competes in agility. And then you can write down this equation, h is equal to negative 16t squared plus 12t. That negative is very important to gravity, where h is the height of the leap in feet and t is the time since the leap in seconds. So t is going to be the amount of time Mischief soars in the air. So what values of t does Mischief start and end the jump? Here is our question. Here's our find. So I'm going to ask you over and over again, like, what is your find? And in this case, your find is what values of t does Mischief start and end the jump? That's what we're going to look for. But in task fashion, there are multiple parts that are going to walk us through the steps. So part 1 is, what do you notice about the structure of the quadratic expression in this problem? So in these notes, I'm going to be typing, and I'm going to do my very best to write the question in my responses so that when you read your notes, it should make sense. So, wow, that's like too big a font right there. Let's see. What color? Should we do purple? Is that too light of purple? Let's do darker purple. Okay. The structure. Sorry if you hear my keyboard typing too. The structure of the expression. And the expression is this, that h is equal to negative 16t squared. Has a negative sign in front, and it has a value of t squared. Please just write the superscript too. Which means the expression is a quadratic. All right, so that's part 1. Part 2 is, in the equation, explain what is going on at t is equal to 0. So to explain what's going on at t is equal to 0, what you can write down in your notes for part 2 is, this is how I write it. First of all, I'm going to copy down this. Oh, I don't want to paste anything. Right over here. All right. In this equation, explain what is going on at t is equal to 0. So in your notebook, you should definitely write down this equation again, and then you can write at t is equal to 0. You have h is equal to negative 16 t squared plus 12t. And instead of t, I'm going to write 0 and 0. So what does that mean for our expression? Well, that means that this term is going to go to 0, and this term is going to go to 0. What is h again? It is our height in feet, of course. So let me type out this next part. At the time t is equal to 0, our height is also equal to 0. Mischief has not leapt off the ground yet. So this is really important when you look at an equation with the negative 16t squared. Think about, as a problem-solving strategy, what happens at t is equal to 0? What happens when the height is 0? When the height is 0, obviously mischief has not left the ground, but there's also another point in time where the height is equal to 0. That's what we're going to get to next. Part 3. There's 4 parts in this. Okay, I recopied the problem down here in case you had to pause and catch up. It's the same problem. I just copied it down. There's only 2 more parts. Part 3, explain how you would use the equation to determine the time it takes a dog to land back on the ground. So I'm gonna change that. It should say ground. So here's the thing. At time is equal to 0, mischief jumps. And the height is equal to 0. Mischief jumps, and when mischief lands back down, the height is again equal to 0, but the time is like, I don't know, 4 seconds, 2 seconds. Let's find out how much time it takes mischief to land back on the ground. Okay, this is ground. Okay, so back on land, when the dog lands back on the ground, that means the height is equal to 0. So we're going to set h equal to 0. Okay, now we have something we know how to solve. In the previous video, I told you that you could solve quadratics if one side was equal to 0. Well, voila, one side is equal to 0. Now we can factor. So let's factor. 0 is equal to, my first rule of factoring, I'm not going to do a t-chart here. I'm not going to do a t-chart here because I don't have a constant or a number on the end. So I'm going to take out the greatest common factor, which is 4, negative 4t. That's my greatest common factor out of these 2 terms. I'm left with 4t plus 3. So what do I do in this case? Well, I'm going to use my zero product property. I'm going to break it up into 2 equations. And then solve for t. So t is equal to 0. That makes sense because at time 0, the height is also 0. And then, oh, good, I have, oh, this should be negative. Sorry, people. Sorry. It should be negative. Negative times negative is a positive. That scared me for a second. I'll tell you why that was scary for a second. T minus 3. So we're going to add 3 on both sides. 4t equals 3. Divide by 4, divide by 4. T is equal to 3/4 of a second, which is less than 1 second. The poodle was in the air. Okay. For part 4, now consider the 2 solutions for t. Which one is reasonable? Does the final answer make sense based on this context? Context means the story of the problem. And the story of the problem is this poodle is jumping in the air. So if the poodle is jumping in the air, then how long is it going to take? Does it make sense that the poodle lands and it's been 0 seconds? No, but it kind of makes more sense that it takes the poodle 3/4 of a second. It's less than 1 second, but 3/4 of a second to land back on the ground. So let's see. Whoa. Whoa, I did something. Okay. Which one is reasonable? There are 2 answers for this problem. One is more reasonable. T equals 0 is not reasonable because we know it takes some amount of time It just makes more sense. Go ahead and write that down. You can pause the video so you can copy that down. Basically, this is saying that the question was asked. I'll show you what the question was at the top. It was, what values of t does Mischief start and end the jump? Well, to start the jump, this answer is reasonable for the start of the jump. This answer sorry, I have to hear my keys. For the start of the jump, it makes sense that time would be equal to 0, and for the end of the jump, it would make sense that it took some amount of time to jump in the air, so it took 3/4 of a second. Okay, that was a lot of information. The most important part is in your notebook, if you read it, you should be able to know what problem we're talking about, even if that means you draw a little picture of a dog so that we can reference this later. All right, that's it for this video. I've talked enough. Finish up your notes. See you tomorrow.